.NET DataStore, an intro session. Hi everybody, welcome to Elevate 2020. My name is Govinda Lopez and I will be your presenter today. Following, you may find a little disclaimer about this session. Okay, so now let's talk about the session agenda. First, we will talk about what is the .NET DataStore. We will then continue to C# programming features. We will be migrating to PowerBuilder projects. And we will be consuming the Web API with PowerBuilder. And we will also be consuming the .NET DataStore with an ASP .NET Core page. Here is a little information about myself. I've been in the industry for about 20 years now, and I've been working with PowerBuilder for over 15 years now. Here's a little information about the company, Appeon. Let's start with what is a .NET DataStore. Well, the .NET DataStore brings the productivity of PowerBuilder to C# development. It provides a pure C# implementation of the data window and other commonly used PowerBuilder features. And the tool is also included to automatically convert existing data windows to .NET. Now, this implementation of the data window is non-visual, and that's why it is a data store and not a data window. But you still virtually get all the same properties, events, and functions that you get from a traditional PowerBuilder data store. The major difference is that it is a pure .NET implementation of the data store, and it's also open source. It is a highly productive product, and it is easy to learn. The .NET DataStore provides virtually the same productive approach to programming as PowerBuilder. It is including non-visual data window APIs, properties, methods, and events. It provides data buffers, transaction management, system functions, and SQL programming. You need minimal coding for this because developers can accomplish big tasks with few lines of code. And all SQL is defined in the C# Poco model of the DataStore class. We'll delve into that in just a moment, and this actually minimizes redundant code. You'll also get automatic conversion because an automatic conversion tool, the data window converter, it generates standard C# Poco models from existing data windows, and it includes the data window childs. It is based on a standard architecture, and that's because it is a model-driven. Yes, that's right. It's a model-driven approach by a standard C# Poco model that contains all data-related properties and attributes. There is a strict separation of concerns, and no proprietary SDR formats are there. It's a managed code. That's right. It's 100% managed code, so it benefits from the full power of the Common Language Runtime, the CLR, such as a built-in security, faster performance, and ease of deployment. It is based on .NET Core, so it's compatible with .NET Core Framework 2. You can deploy to either Windows or Linux OS running a variety of web servers, or you can even go serverless. It is based on an open design. That means that it's open source. All libraries of the .NET DataStore are available in the C# source code form, and in addition to the compile NuGet packages. You can use any C# IDE. You can maintain your .NET projects in any C# IDE, such as Visual Studio or Snap Develop. It is also iList compatible. The .NET DataStore inherits from a standard .NET list. It enables you to natively integrate with any other .NET code and libraries. The .NET DataStore class is created based on a standard C# Poco model. It maps columns to database tables and contains the related SQL. All the data window related functions are provided as either attributes or properties of the model. For example, the following data window features are supported as standard model attributes or properties. It uses the pbselect raw SQL's parameters, table, key, update where function, store procedures, etc. It uses those in the CRUD definitions. You can define the data window presentation styles, except for overlay and crosstab. Let's now take a look at an example of a Poco model. Now, Poco stands for plain old C# object. And if we look at it in detail, we will see that we have the using statements first. This tells .NET Core project to include certain libraries inside of the project. Next, I get a namespace, which is the namespace used for this object. Then you may find the specific .NET DataStore definition. For example, the first one is declaring that it is based on a data window object, which is the ddepartment object, and it's a grid data window. Then the next line is declaring the table it will use. Next, we can see the data window select, which in this case has a column. It's a columns placeholder. That means that if I add or remove any columns from this object, I will automatically create the underlying SQL statements for me. We have the update strategy right there, which in this case it would be key and concurrency check columns. And the key modification strategy is there too. So for example, the delete then insert is there. We can also declare the XML templates that we want to use. Next, we find the name of the class, which in this case it's d_department. You can take that as if it was basically the data object. Inside of it, we can see that the columns have been declared here too. So the first one is a key data window column. It is the department ID integer column, as you can see right there. Then the next one is a string column, and it is called name. And we have a concurrency check on that column. Then you'll see that we have the budget, the start date, and the administrator columns. So a nice thing about this is that if I actually add, edit, remove, or anything I do to this columns, that columns placeholder that's on the data window select, that would actually take care of the underlying SQL select for me for the SQL CRUD operations. So let's say that I add another column right here, then the proper updates SQL would be placed in there for me. Now, the .NET DataStore provides a set of comprehensive interfaces to allow users to easily implement non-visual data window techniques and other expanded functions in C#. For example, the DataStore APIs, they support almost the same non-visual properties, methods, and events as the PowerBuilder DataStore. Data window expressions supports using data window expressions in such as computed fields, sorting, filters, evaluating methods, and validation rules. Data window property expressions, it supports accessing model metadata via dot notation, so that's actually a very nice feature. Data window data expressions, so it provides a set of methods to achieve the same results of data window data expressions. For example, the get data from multiple rows, set data to multiple rows, get data from columns, and set data to columns. The child data window, so it supports using the child data windows, and it provides the getChild method to manipulate data. dynamic data window technique. So it supports dynamically creating and retrieving data to the .NET DataStore. It also supports dynamically accessing the data window data via describe and modified methods. There are generic APIs, so it provides a set of generic APIs that make coding more concise and type safe, thereby significantly boosting development productivity. Expanded functions, there's supports for aggregate functions like sum, average, max, min, and the data buffer access and manipulation functions too. For example, the reverse, all, any, exist, and this is done through generic interfaces. iList inheritance is there too. So for example, if we see the .NET DataStore can inherit from an iList, this actually means that it's actually enabling the data from the .NET DataStore to be readily passed to other .NET classes. That's very nice too. You can also manage transactions in two different ways. .NET DataStore explicit transactions can be managed in the same way as PowerBuilder, or you can use implicit transaction management that is provided in Snap Objects to create complex multi-type transactions with minimal coding. That's a very elegant technique. And now for the REST API extensions, it provides multiple methods. For example, export JSON, import JSON, add data store, or get data store to facilitate the data exchange between the PowerBuilder client and the REST API. The .NET DataStore is a valid parameter type in the REST API actions. For system functions, the .NET DataStore together with C# provides robust support for commonly used PowerScript functions. Many PowerScript system functions already have equivalent native methods in C#, and the .NET DataStore adds support for an additional 70 non-visual system functions. These system functions are provided as either class methods or extension methods of the C# data type. The data window conversion utility. It automatically generates the C# Poco models from existing data windows, data stores, and child data windows. XML import export templates are also converted. That's nice. It allows you to batch convert multiple data windows at once. It supports various leading relational databases including SQL Server, Oracle, SQL Anywhere, Postgre, MySQL, SQLite. It supports converting data windows from most versions of PowerBuilder. Sybase PowerBuilder 8 through 12.5, SAP PowerBuilder 12.6, Appeon's PowerBuilder 2017 all the way up through 2019 R3. So in a nutshell, the DataStore, the .NET DataStore is the most effective technology for PowerBuilder customers to move to the cloud with an API-enabled architecture. Okay, so I think we've had a good quick intro on to what the .NET DataStore is, but I think most of you are ready for us to actually take a look into how we can actually migrate PowerBuilder projects and data windows and take a look into what that means in C# and how we can actually use that with a PowerBuilder client or with another UI technology. Okay, so here let's go to the demo. Now in this demo I would show you two applications. Now these are simple applications. They are having basically the same set of application techniques that you would get out of any traditional PowerBuilder application. Even though they're short, they're not too complex, and the reason for that is, you know, only for this demo. But anyhow, you can basically get the same set of techniques that you would get from any other PowerBuilder application. Now in this demo, what I will start by doing is showing you how I can easily migrate this PowerBuilder application, and then converting the DataWindows and the business logic over to a C# Web API. After we have successfully migrated this over to a Web API, what we will be doing is then consuming that Web API with PowerBuilder. And then finally, what we would be doing is then going on to actually consume this with an ASP .NET Core page, which is based on Blazor. Now for that, I have another project which is a little bit more complex, but we'll look into that later on today. So now let's continue on with this one. Let's start with this one right here. So first of all, I need to show you what this is about. Now I will run the application, and this is a sales demo application. If I click here on login, you will notice immediately that we have this traditional PowerBuilder application. I have enabled the UI themes, which is a nice feature of PowerBuilder. And now in this application, you will see that in this window I have 3 data windows. I have a master data window, which is composed of the customer list right here. And then we have a detailed data window right here, which contains the order information, as you can see right here. Now we also have a detailed data window, which is the list of product details. So if I double click on it, I get a traditional data window right here with a PowerBuilder window. And if I click here, I still get a report out of this. Now if I look into some more details, I can see that I can manage customers. For example, I create a new customer. I can also right here do maintenance to customers, to existing customers. I can double click on it and so forth. So there we see that this is a traditional PowerBuilder application, right? But now let's see what it takes to actually take this and expose it as a web API. Now I can of course migrate my entire PowerBuilder application, or I can just do portions of it. So let's say that I want to actually expose the functionalities of this window right here. This is the order maintenance window. And let's say that I want to expose that as a web API. That way I can consume it with PowerBuilder or with any other UI technology. So if I have, let's say, any other mobile application technology or JavaScript or ASP .NET Core or whatever I want to use with it. So then what I would be doing is I would be first of all migrating the data windows over to .NET DataStores. Now I would also like to mention that this application right here has also been refactored into an NVO. This the functionalities from this window at least, and the reason for that is that I wanted to take advantage of this type of programming, and the reason for that is that I don't want to be spending time extrapolating all the visual UI stuff from this business logic stuff. So what I did is in this NVO I placed the function right here, which is the delete order function, and I know it's just one, but it's good enough for us to take a look at it. So in it we have some embedded SQL, we have some business logic, we have some transaction management, so forth. Of course, this solution also can handle an application that has not been repartitioned. But again, I'm just doing it like this for demo purposes right now. So let's go ahead and continue and carry on. So first, what I need to do to actually get this migrated is I would now open Snap Develop. Now, for those of you that may not know, Snap Develop is a very nice C# IDE. And this IDE is not meant for UI development. It's actually meant for business logic migration. And this Snap Develop IDE comes included with your subscription of PowerBuilder Cloud Pro. It's a very nice tool because it provides me with a lot of handy features that I can use to actually get things done a lot easier and faster. Now let me start by showing you first steps. Now what I did beforehand, there are 2 manual steps that I did beforehand. Well, in fact a little bit more than 2, but let's go into them right now, right here. So the first manual step I did to actually get my web API created is I went and created a new project right here. Now this new project, I can select from a variety of projects, each one as you can see right here. For this demo, what I did is I created an ASP .NET Core Web API project, and it's this one right here. Now I could also create a console application based on .NET Core. I can also create a class library. So let's say that I don't want to consume all this business logic and DataWindows. I don't want to consume them as a web API. Let's say I have an existing .NET project and I want to consume it in there. So I can create a class library which is a .NET Core based or a standard .NET Framework standard library. I can also create a shared project, or I can create an XUnit testing project right here based on .NET Core. So for this specific one, what I did is I created an ASP .NET Core Web API. So let's just continue and carry on. And now I can go ahead and close this because I have already created it. Now right here, the next portion of it is that I created a skeleton of a service right here. Now we'll go more into details about this in just a moment, but just to let you know right here, this is a service, and in this service I have actually instantiated a data context, and the data context is something similar to SQL CA, which you get from basically the same one that you get from PowerBuilder. But in C# it is called the data context. So basically right here it's connecting to the database right here, and right here is where I would place or paste my translated business logic from PowerScript over to C#. Okay, so now I will close this, and there's something else that I created, and this is an interface. Now an interface is basically telling me the list of methods that I would have available on my service. So it's this interface right here, and this is actually declaring only the service. So this is the order service with the first method that it has, and it's telling me that it's returning a short. Now this exclamation mark, it means, or it represents in C# that it would be accepting null values. Now this short is equivalent to the integer in PowerScript. This method right here, this function, is actually accepting 2 parameters, and this is string parameters. We have the customer number and the order number. We'll look into that in just a moment. So let's take a look at the architecture of this web API. Now for starters, we have the solution. This is the C# solution. It's basically the same that you have with your PowerBuilder workspace. And then we have the project. This project right here is the equivalent to the target that you get from your PowerBuilder application. So this is the target. And then right here would be this folders right here would be like your libraries, and then you have your objects, right? So this is, remember, this is a web API. This is non-visual. So what we're doing is non-visual coding right here. Now the next thing we need to take a look at is, first of all, the program. Now this would be basically the same that you would get from your PowerBuilder project. Well, not the project, it's basically the application object. So this is the application object of your C# web API. This application object is telling it to create a web host builder. it's going to be actually using the startup right here, the startup class right here. So it's basically calling, for example, the open event. So this is the actual startup right here. So let's take a look at the startup. Now the startup is going to be asking for a configuration. Now the configuration, which is what we will be looking into, it's going to be passed in here. So we're actually going to be configuring the basic services for this to actually run. And the first thing that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be telling that this services needs to add a data context. Now remember that the data context is basically the same thing that you have with PowerBuilder SQL CA. So I'm telling it to use an ODBC connection, and the connection string is this one, Cloud Pro. So if I were to go to the app settings.json file, you will see my connection strings right here, and this is the Cloud Pro connection string. So this is actually having, you know, the DSN and all that. So this is what it's looking for. This connection string would be actually telling my web API to connect to the database. Then inside of here, I have already add some services. I would be creating these services in just a second, but I have created them beforehand just for the purposes of this demo. But as you can see right here, I have the order service right here. So I'm telling it to include the service for this order service as a scoped service. This is the interface of this service, and then this is the final service. It is also accepting gzip compression right here. I am also including developer exception pages right here. I'm going to be also letting it know that I can use hosts. And again, we support response compression. We're going to be using MVC, and we are going to be using the data window. So we'll look into this just in a moment. Just once we have created them, we'll look into those. Okay, so now that we have seen this, let's take a look at the data context. Now the data context is the SQL CA object that you get from PowerBuilder. So this data context, it's actually going to be accepting the connection strings right here, and it has its parameters for it to actually connect to the database right here. So you can actually create a context, a data context by yourself by right-clicking right here on the project, and then you can click on Add, New Item, and then the data context. Now you can name the data context, and it's going to be asking you what database you want to connect to. So once you select the database, it would be creating the connection string for you. It would place that connection string inside the app settings.json file, and then it would create this this Appeon data context file for you. So it's basically setting everything up so you can connect to the database. Okay, so now let's take a look into how I can actually start migrating over my data windows. Okay, so first of all, I'll go here to this solution. I'll right click on it, and then I would open the PowerBuilder workspace. Now keep in mind that I don't need to have PowerBuilder open. I can close it if I want to, so let's close it. And I can just go ahead and open PowerBuilder workspace. This is the workspace that I want to be working with, so let's click OK. Now you'll notice that I have my workspace open right here as a read-only workspace. So this is the workspace, this is the target. Here are my libraries. Remember that I want to expose only a certain functionality from this application. Well, in here I have my window, I have my NVO, and I have my data windows. Now remember I was telling you about this conversion utility that would convert my data windows over to C#. Well, I can go one by one like this, or I can go here to the library level or even to the target level and right click on it and convert the data windows inside of it over to C#. So this is the list of data windows I want to convert right here. So all I need to do is just click right here. Now remember that there are some new things that we can add right here to it. So we have some other general settings we can place in here. So you can see them right here. Now what I would be doing is clicking right here on export, and you'll notice that it's going to be telling me what project I want to export this into. So this is the sales demo project. What folder I want to put the C# Poco models into. So this is the models folder right here, which is empty right now. I don't need to create subfolders, PBT or Pebbles. And this is the namespace of my project. So I will just click on export. There we go. I'll click OK. Okay, so far so good. Now what we need to do is actually have take a look at this. So this actually already migrated or converted my DataWindows over to C#. Now let's take a look at the DataWindows, the Poco models. Now this is the dcust list all. So this is the main data window I have. This is the master data window. If we look into it, remember that we saw the using statements right here. Then we have a namespace, as you can see. Then we have a declaration right here, which is the data window. This is telling me that this Poco model is a data window, and this is the data object it will be using. It's telling me that this is a grid data window. Now this is the data window select attribute. It's very nice, this attribute, because it's actually going to be doing the select. And I have my from statement right here with my left outer join, my group by, my order by, and so forth. Now there's a nice columns placeholder right here. So if I were actually going to make any changes to my current list of columns, then let's say that I want to add a new column or remove this columns right here, this would actually create the underlying SQL for me. So any SQL select or SQL update or anything, it would actually be creating it for me. So that's a nice thing. Now I have my class, which is my dcust list. I have my columns. This is my first string column, which is the customer number. You can see that the attribute right here, data window column, is telling it that this is the table and this is the column name. It's a public column, by the way. It has its getter and a setter, so I can actually get values from it and set values to it. So this is basically my C# Poco model. I have a SQL compute right here as well. Now it's important to notice the differences between SQL compute and data window compute. This is a computed column that comes from the SQL statement that I got. And then I can get a data window compute, which is basically an object inside of the data window. Now let's carry on to see what's next. So now that I have created my data windows, my .NET data stores from this, I can actually convert them by scaffold, service and controller from model. And then as you can see, we include already templates for the services, and here are some of them that come already included. So if I can actually scaffold services to be consumed with any PowerBuilder client application, any other non-PowerBuilder applications. Let's say that I want to consume this with I don't know, JavaScript or something, and then any other client that is a combination of PowerBuilder and non-PowerBuilder. So of course you can also create your own services and controller templates, and you can also set the parsing rules for those. But let's just use the ones that we have right here. I will be selecting none for the base class, and I will just go ahead and click on generate. So this has already scaffolded the services and controllers for me. So let's take a look at the services right here. If I double click on this, I scroll down a little bit, you will see that I have my service created for me. Now this is a very basic service, and it's actually creating a retrieval service for me. So as you can see, I have my datastore.retrieve. We'll look briefly into a little bit more of this APIs from within the data store. So let's look at another example from another controller. Let's look at this one right here. And the reason for that is that this one includes also the update right here. So this is actually doing the full CRUD. So as you can see right here, what do we have right here for this controller, for this specific service, I'm sorry. So I'm actually going to be returning a data store, and this data store is of this data object type. This is the retrieval method that it's accepting two parameters. We have a string parameter and another string parameter. Then this is actually going to be creating a new data store based on this data object, and we're passing in the data context, which is similar to the SQL CA. Now here's the data store.retrieve method with the two parameters I'm passing in. Again, I can actually get the same amount of APIs, which is methods, properties, events, and functions. So let's say that I want to do something else. Let's say I want to do a data store dot get item, for example. Get item right there. Let's say that I want to filter something out. There we go. Or set sort or something else like that. So I have the select and so forth. So here are all the methods that I get and I have over there. Now we'll look into more details about this in just a second. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So what I would be doing is let's minimize all this right here so we can take a better look at it. Now I'm going to be closing this specific workspace for just a second, and I would be opening a different workspace, this one right here, so I can show you some more elaborate examples of how we're actually going to be translating the .NET Data Store. So here we have the data store, and I'll show you what things are supported. So for this one right here is basically what we get from our PowerBuilder functions. So if I get to see this right here, is basically pure PowerScript code. If I right click on it and I do a translate and open in editor, what I would see is this is actually translating all the PowerScript into C# right here. So as you can see, this is doing full CRUD functionalities on the data store. So right here I have my PowerScript and my C#. So this is generating a new data store object right here. Then we have each one of the single variables right here. This right here is creating my data store, assigning the data object and setting the transaction object, which is what we get here on the C# code. We have the new data store, we're assigning the data object, and then we're setting the data context in this case. And then we get the same things. We have a insert row, it's the add row right here. And then we have the data store update, here it is. We have transaction management, here we have it, the commit, here's the commit. We have the rollback. We got the get item number right here, which is get item, and then the number would be short for C#. We have the retrieval method right here. We have a set item. We have an update, again transaction management. For example, we have the delete row right here. Another update with a commit and rollback, and so forth. So this is actually performing CRUD operations with a data store. But let's look more into that. Now let's take a look at a different one. So let's talk about data access. So we have here a simple demo of data access functions performed on a data store. So I'll translate and open in editor. So here we have it again. PowerScript code, C# code. So right here we have again the data store. It has been created with the data object and data context. So then we are here retrieving my data store. I'm performing a get item right here, get item string, and get item date time. As you can see as well over here, we have the set item right here. Let's look into the set item. Oh, it's right in here. There we go. So this is also supported. Accessing data from the data window data object is supported. Now let's take a look at another example. Data window properties, accessing data window properties. So let's click right here, translate it, and see what that gives us. So basically, again, we're creating the data store with the data context and so forth. Now we're looking into, let's see, what's this? This is a data window column count property from the data window. So there we go. We can get it from there. Now we can see and look into the updates, or we're seeing if this is actually accepting updates or not. And here we have it. But in this case, in C#, it's translating it over to a string. So there we go, that's supported as well. Now the next one is doing other data manipulation to it. For example, the find, the sort, the filter, etc. So let's see how that looks over in C#. So again, creating my data store, doing a retrieval to the data store. I'm finding the index, which is basically the same that you get from the data window find method right here. I'm getting the item string. Here you go. I'm doing a set sort with a sort. Setting up filters. There you go. It's doing a delete row and a row discard. And delete row and rows move. And finally the reset. So this is some more data manipulation techniques. Let's now talk about how we can actually migrate over the business logic. So now I'm going to close this. I don't need this demo right here anymore. So let's open up the previous the one that we had, which is this one, the sales application demo. Here we go. Now remember that I had an NVO. This is the NVO. Let's open that up. Now remember how I translated my business logic over to C#. Let's do that with this one right here. I'm translating it over, and here's my translated business logic. I'm going to be copying this. Now remember that I had a skeleton that I did beforehand. This one right here. Well, this is where I'm going to be placing my business logic that I just migrated over. Now there is a little bit of code that got created for me which I don't need, so I'm removing that right there. I'm going to be aligning my source code and then removing this unnecessary source code. So let's just do that, and there you go. It's actually accepted the changes, so I can actually save it. And now that it has saved it, I can actually close this because I have already migrated my business logic and my data windows. I have created the services and controllers, so I can actually go ahead and build my solution. So let's go ahead and do that. Hopefully we won't get any errors. Let's see how that goes. There we go. So we got no errors. Everything succeeded. That's great news. Now let's see how this is actually doing. Now let's go ahead and test this up. Let's go open this controller right here, which is the product order list controller. Now if we scroll down a little bit, you'll see that we have a retrieval and we have an update to this. Let's go test out this update. If I right click on this controller, I can run a test to the controller, or I can debug my tests. So let's now just run the test. Then we get this nice web API tester tool. This tool is very handy because you don't have to be creating a front end for your tests, and you don't have to mingle around with complicated JSON. It's also doing mocking of the data from the data store. As you can see right here, I have my columns. It's bringing me the data type of each one of the columns. I can also directly retrieve the data for this data store from within this controller, which is the retrieve controller or retrieve method from the controller. So let's pass in the arguments that it is expecting. So this is the customer number and then the order number. There we go. So I can now retrieve this. Okay, great. Now this actually retrieved 3 data windows for me, or at least 3 rows of the data window for me, or data store. And as you can see here are the values. Now let's say that I wanted to change something. Let's say that it's not pants, let's say it's shorts. And then let's carry on with this. Now first of all, this is accepting the parameters. And then the Web API tester tool can also handle this nice thing, which is the headers. I can add any headers I want. This is actually adding the ones that I need. I can modify them. I can also create my own. It's also accepting authorization tokens, so I can use basic authorization, JWT tokens, or OAuth 2 that is supported. Now remember that I said that you don't need to be mingling around complicated JSON. Well, this is creating the JSON for me. So if we scroll down, this is the original value, and this is the changes I made. So that's nice. Now the cookies, it's also handling cookies for me. So if I actually go ahead and change this by sending it, it's telling me that it got a response status code of 200. It's actually saved the changes for me. So that means that my Web API is successfully working. So that's good. Now let's go close this up and go back to PowerBuilder. Let's see how we can actually consume this with PowerBuilder. So I'll open up the project I had beforehand right in here. Okay, so this is my project. Now what I need to do is actually consume the Web API from it. So I would be going into my to-do list. Now we have provided a new object which is called the REST client object. It's a very nice fancy object because it actually will be enabling me to consume RESTful Web Services. As you can see, I can set the request header for this. I'm telling it to accept JSON and accept compression, which is gzip in this case. So I've prepared my REST client object, and then right here I'm consuming my NVO right here. My NVO orders is this one right here. This is the method from it. So I'm going to be commenting that out, and instead of that I would be consuming the one from the Web API. So in my REST client object, I'm sending a delete request to this Web API, passing in this parameters and catching the response. So let's carry on to the next one. Now this is the old style data window retrieve. Let's comment that out, and I'm actually going to be now using the REST client retrieve method. So I'm going to be retrieving this data window from this Web API. So that way I have modified my data window. Let's do the same with the other ones. Here we go. And then the next one right here. Basically it's the same thing. Now let's take a look at the data window update right here. So I'm going to comment that out, and I'm going to be using the REST client submit method instead. I'm going to be submitting this data window to this Web API and then catching up the response right here. Now remember that my transaction management is being handled over at the Web API, so I can comment out the rollback and commit from here. There we go. So that actually has made my application be ready to consume the Web API that I just did. So this is no longer doing a client server approach. It's now doing an API architecture approach. So what I need to do is actually run this Web API. Let's give it a second for it to run. Here we go. Okay, so it's loading, and let's go back over here. So as you can see, it's already running. My Web API is running. So let's go ahead and run the application, the PowerBuilder application. There you go. Now let's open up that window. Remember that that's the one that I just did. So here you go. You can see that it's actually consuming the Web API. So let's give it a second. There we go. It's loading my Web API. Now the first time it's catching everything up, so it's going to be a little bit slower, but it's going to be faster every time that you do that again. So let me show you that that's true right there. So you see it's a lot faster now. So there we go. This is how I was actually capable of converting my PowerBuilder window into a Web API approach. So this is now how I can consume this with PowerBuilder. Now let's take a look at a different project and see how we can actually consume that with an ASP.NET Core page. So let's close this up. right here. I won't need this web API anymore. We're already seeing this project right here. Okay, let's go to the next one right here. So this is another application. I'll demo it to you very shortly. I'm going to be running through this a lot more faster because time's running up. But again, I have a window right here. Let me show it to you. Okay, so again, it's an order management window right here. And as you can see, I have a customer list and an orders list, right? I can also, let's say that I want to remove an order from this one right here. So I can delete this order. Now it's asking me if I want to delete it. If I click yes, then the business logic is jumping up and telling me, hey, you can't delete this. It's already been shipped. So let's click OK. So now this is actually a very simple application. Again, it's only, you know, showing me this this one right here, but let's see what that is behind the scenes. So we have two data windows. We're going to be converting those. Now we have right here this actual application is also being refactored into an NVO right here. These are the data windows that I have. I have also a drop-down data window right here. And so I'm going to be converting those, right, as we can see right here. So let's actually go through that a little bit faster for the benefit of time. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to be running faster. Okay, so let's just go ahead and close that up and open up the PowerBuilder project again. So I'm going to be translating or converting this data windows. Oops, still processing. Let's give it a second for this. There we go. It's already processed. So let's click on this, convert data windows to C# models. Once again, I'm going to be converting my data windows, clicking right here, custom orders. I don't need this. I'm going to be exporting this. Here we have it. It's been exported over to my models folder, as you can see right here. I will now be doing scaffolding of the service SN controllers. Now for this project, I actually won't be doing controllers. Well, I will be doing controllers, but since I'm going to be consuming this inside of an existing .NET project, I don't actually need the controller. But you know, I'm just you know, carrying on with the demo. So let's just do this for the sake of this demo. So I'm generating service SN controllers again. If I don't need them, I just won't use them. That's it. So here we have the controllers. We have the services. Again, these are very basic CRUD services. I can continue developing on them. I can continue adding more methods if I want, or whatever I want to do with them. So there we go. Now I need to also migrate my business logic. Okay, so for that I need to open my NVO, translate the selected document. And there we go. So it's actually got the entire document, and it's going to be migrating all the methods or functions that I have from it. So I'm going to be copying this, and for this one I had already created a skeleton to this one right here. I'm pasting my business logic in there. I'm now going to be removing the business logic that is not needed for this, which is this one over here. Let's align the source code again. So there we go. Okay, I'm scrolling up to just align the source code again. So here we have it. Align. Oh, my bad. Let's go back down here. There we go. Okay, so going back up, I won't need this declaration right here because this is already defined right there. So there we go. I can save it. Now if there's a little thing that I need to do for this specific code right here, and that is because In PowerBuilder, we are accustomed to actually doing the beginning of the transaction somewhere else, but I need to do it in this specific method that I have right here. So I'm going to be doing a context begin transaction, and I'm going to be scrolling down and doing the same thing right here on the delete order. So let's go ahead and context dot begin transaction again. There we go. Now let's save the changes. Again, this has completed, and I have already migrated everything over from this right here. I can close the workspace, and let's just build the solution. Now let's give it a second for this to actually successfully build. It's almost finished. Here we go. There we go. So nothing failed, everything succeeded. That's great news. So let's open up this project. Now what I'm going to be doing is opening up Visual Studio. Now just keep in mind that everything that I did, I can continue maintaining it over in any other IDE that I want. So for this example, I'm going to be using Visual Studio, but I can use anything else. So let's just go ahead and open it up. Here we go. Now this is the ASP .NET Core Blazor page I told you about, and there's something that I need to let you know about, and that is that we do not do UI migration. It's only business logic, so you actually need to do the UI beforehand yourself. This is a manual work that you need to do. But the business logic, which is a great portion of you know, any application or any project you may have, well, that's already been migrated. So remember that I had my models right here. So here's my customer model right here, and again, this was created using the data window converter, and I can make any changes in this IDE. So remember that I had an NVO that I migrated over. It's right in here. Remember that I added my context begin transaction. Here it is. So as you can see, I'm reusing that business logic that I already migrated, and that business logic, I'm going to be using it with this other project, which is my Blazor project, or my Blazor page. So let's open that up. I'm going to be opening up right here on pages, and I'm opening this index. So let's get that open. So as you can see right here, I'm going to be showing you binding of the data into the visuals. So this is going to be binding the data from the data store into the visuals right here. So as you can see, this is my model, the customer, and this one is in fact my first column right here. So this is actually a table. This is a table header. This is my column. If I scroll down a little bit more, you'll see that here I have each one of the rows from it. So this is doing the binding of the data into this table right here. And then if I go ahead and carry on, I will now show you how to do the binding of the business logic. So let's open this up and go into this one right here. So as you can see right here, I have my order service, right? Now if I continue scrolling down, you'll see that I have my customers model, which is my D customer. I have my data window, my drop down data windows right here. Scrolling down, and I will take a look at how we can actually do the binding of the business logic. So let's scroll down right here. So remember I had an NVO, which is a delete customer NVO. This is where I'm going to be doing that. I'm doing the binding of the business logic right in here. So this is how you would actually be doing all this that you need on this ASP.NET Core project. But now let's take a look how this actually looks for the end user. So let's run this. Okay, so this is actually running the project for me. It's actually loading the ASP.NET Core page. Let's just give it a minute for it to load. Here we go. Okay, I don't need to restore any page. And it's loading the visuals and it's loading everything back up. So again, here we have it. Now remember that we had two data windows, right? We had the customer's data window, and then we have the detailed data window right here, which is the order list of for it, as you can see. So I have my list of orders inside of it. So if I'm actually going to eliminating this, deleting this order, it's going to ask me, do you want to delete the order? And if I click OK, the business logic is jumping in. It's telling me the order cannot be deleted because it has already been processed. So this is how I was actually capable of converting my PowerBuilder application into an ASP.NET Core page right here. So once again, this is only a demo. I decided to do this, you know, for simplicity and all that. And this is PowerBuilder, and this is the ASP.NET Core representation of it. So I hope you have enjoyed this demo, and let's carry on with the next part of this session. Okay, so don't forget to connect with the Appeon community. You can do so by going to community.appeon.com. Remember that we have discussions, we have tech articles and videos, we have free online training, and much more. We have MVPs connecting to the community website who can help you answer your questions. Remember, there's also Appeon staff actively looking in the community as well. So you can also get your questions answered by Appeon staff as well if you need. Now here you may also find some links to our social media. Okay, so that's it for this demo, this session, and I thank you very much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed Elevate 2020. We hope to see you next year. And once again, thank you very much.